Hello, hello. So I'm going to give a little breakdown kind of about this material and how I made it. Just out of curiosity, in case anyone wants to know. So I've got a texture over here, um, which I'll pull it up, hopefully. Get over here. Lifts 2. So essentially, it's a texture that has a bunch of ASCII-like glyphs, I guess you could say. I just made it simply. 16 by 16, it could probably be much smaller. I was just working in the 256, and each row is kind of like a different visual weight. So this is kind of for the most densely bright areas, and this is going to be used for the medium-ish values, these two ranges, and then for the least amount up here. So to map that, I essentially kind of broke down the Flipbook node and kind of created my columns and my rows, right? Because it's 4 and 4. And then I'm using a bunch of fmod and lerps to kind of like shift the UVs down. So if I don't do this and we just go with the regular old UVs in here, you'll see it kind of it's creating this pattern. And I'll go in and I'll set my basic input to 0. So this if it were a flipbook, it's going to show the very first line and it repeats this texture over and over again. So what I need to do is I need to make it so that that instead of showing you each one, and I'll actually kill this so you guys can see it kind of without the mask. So instead of making it kind of this pattern, and I need to pixelate it because it helps. But if I take this to 16, we can kind of see it pretty clearly. It just repeats this texture and over again. But what I need to do is I need, if it's between 0 and 0.25-ish, I needed to only show the top row. So I did a bunch of fmod math over here and a bunch of lerps on the UVs. So we can kind of see me getting closer. So here's the first lerp. And you can see now I have the top 2 rows are correct, but then the middle 2 rows aren't, and then this lerp gets 1 row down. You can see correctly, now it's 3 rows, and now I just have 1 more row to go, and that's the last lerp. There's probably better math to get in here, but that's how that works. So basically now I can make it so if it's 0 to 0.25, because of the flipbook settings, it'll only show this top row. And we could test it by going down here, going to 0.1, still shows 0.2, still shows 0.3, and it should flip to the other one, yes. So then we go all the way to 1, and that will show the really heavy row. Again, if you go back to the rows here, that should show this bottom one. 0.5 to 0.75 should show this one, 0.25 to 0.5 should show this one, and 0 to 0.25 should show that one. So that's kind of how the concept works, and that's how I got it to do that. Now the other thing I wanted to do is I use this way to generate random using IQ's #3 with a custom node. And so what I want to do is I want to randomize in the X. So now it's a perfectly repeating pattern. I want to randomize in the X what's shown. So then I can do random append it to the X coordinate, and now it will randomly shift the textures around in the X direction. So that's how that works. And this again works for everything. So if I go back to 0, 0.3, 0.4, I guess I said 0.5, but whatever. Come on, you can do it. Yeah, and then 0.75. Well, that'll probably take me too high up. Oh gosh. Well, kind of get the concept here. So then all you have to do is pixelate kind of the texture that we're going to apply this effect on. So if I preview this, I'm just basically going to pixelate the texture to the same amount that I have my um my my pattern. And so that's just a little pixelation right here. And then I'm just kind of maxing out all the channels, and then when I plug that into here, that will get me a nice little randomly based on colors. And so this one's kind of dark, so it's going to be more in the darker ranges. And if I go here, that then applies the mask, and we can up our pixelation amount to much higher, like 32, 64, and then now we're seeing the shape. And again, where it's most bright, that's where you're going to see the heavier shapes, and then it seems like it's mostly neutral grays. So it's mostly sticking to those neutral grays and the lighter colors. So yeah, this is a purely white texture. So when I put that into both, into my mask and not the mask, you can see this then is basically only the bright range of the texture. And then I'm guessing if I were to multiply this by, 0.6, we would get the medium ranges. Yep, and then if I multiply it by 0.4, we'll get the lower half of the medium ranges, and then 0.1 we'll get the very low end ranges. So that's just something I was messing with, something for fun. And that's kind of how this concept works. And that's what I was going for when I woke up this morning. What's cool is you can we can not have it step here, and we could just have this go directly into the single output, and now you get to see all the lovely inner details, and it's kind of fading it to the same amount of the grayscale, which I think is a pretty neat effect. And then I've got a little subtract animation here. You could do this and plug this back in, and you can then subtract it. So each character is animating in and out. You can kind of do it something like this. This would be a little crazy. Let's see what this does. Yeah, it's kind of blobbing over the character. Maybe that makes more sense when it's not all at once, but we could see it in action over here. And then maybe we don't have the mask as sharp, as posterized, basically. And you can kind of see how the characters are animating and changing as it animates. So that's the concept. And again, the parameters, like how many pixelation you want. You could go back to 16 and it'd be nice and funky here. You could see it really in action. So yeah, that's just a fun way to break it down. There probably are more efficient ways to do this. I was just doing it kind of with a mindset of trying to only sample the texture once, the glyph texture once, getting it to randomly pick which glyphs on each row. That was also a thing that I really wanted to do. And then have each one kind of be determined by how much white is in the texture. So we could go back to 32, for instance. And if we change this texture out to... Whoa, way to move it. Unreal. If we change this texture out to be... I'll show you the other link one. You can see here it's like really bright on the rim light, because that's kind of how the texture works. If we look at the texture, it's brighter on the rim. Yeah, so kind of on the rim light, which is a really interesting effect. We could invert this too. So we actually could invert the effect and see what that gets us. It's kind of random on both ends. Interesting. Maybe not quite what people go for. Or um again, you can always plug in the actual values you want, or it can be 100% random. So this is always showing the bright characters, or it could be random on both, and then it's just a random assortment of characters. Which I think looks better when you have more detail. So say like 64. Um yeah, that's the general concept. Yeah, you can see it really obvious here when you don't have when you have the same character, four characters passing around, and then here's with the sampling the brightness or the grayscale values of the texture to then generate which character shows where. So I hope you like this mini breakdown. It's definitely an interesting way to solve the problem. Who knows if it's the best way? But it is only sampling the texture once, which I thought that was a pretty clever output. So yeah, hopefully this helps you inspire you to do more crazy things with materials.